99-cent rental.
This is 99 Cent Rental. I'm your host, Brian White, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Dave White. Hey, Dave, how you doing?
Hello. I am what you might call fair to midland.
Is it midland or is it middling?
Is it middling?
I think it's
I've never fully understood what it meant. Well, I mean, I understand what it means in the context, but I guess context clues really matter.
It don't matter.
It is the first day of fall, as you well know, and I earlier this week put up some Halloween decorations. Now that I have a new apartment, well, relatively new apartment, my new decorations leave me wanting, you might say.
So you need some new decorations.
I do, but we also don't have a lot of space.
This is true, but you could make space. You've got like a lot of spooky shit, just kind of like...
See, that's the thing. It's like it's already a little bit decorated for Halloween, and by a little bit, I mean a lot.
Yeah, you live in... You basically live in the horror section of like a Suncoast Video, kind of.
Yeah, I am a man-child, is essentially what you're saying.
Yeah. Also, this episode is being recorded on Dave's birthday, so everybody take a minute to say happy birthday to Dave.
Yeah, and leave us a review. You know, that's all I want.
Yeah. Have you seen this hippopotamus that has sort of taken over the internet?
I have a lot of questions. First of all, no, but you say it as though he's like taken charge of it, as though like this hippopotamus is now in charge of the internet.
It's a baby pygmy hippopotamus.
You say, did you get that thing I sent you?
Did you get that thing I sent you?
Did you or did you not get that thing I sent you?
No, not that hippopotamus. It's a little baby hippopotamus in a zoo in Thailand, and the internet's in love with him. And I'll tell you, her name is Mudeng, and she seems to be a parable for the sort of Gnostic experience. She's always screaming.
Okay.
Out of just the sheer horror of existence.
Yep.
Always trying to bite her captors.
Also makes sense.
Yeah.
Colonialism.
And is always very wet.
Well, hippopotamus.
Very, very cute hippopotamus. You should check it out.
There was a couple years ago, I would say maybe like 5 years ago or so, there was another baby hippopotamus that I believe was born in captivity. Her name was Fiona. And I kept up pretty regularly with Fiona's sort of a growing experience. Yeah. Hippopotami are pretty terrifying animals.
Yeah, you don't think so? I blame hungry hippos, but they are terribly aggressive.
They are extremely aggressive. I believe they are responsible for like a shitload of deaths in like various countries in Africa because they are so aggressive. Have you ever seen one run underwater?
No.
It is a terrifying thing. Like you can find videos of people who are like, out on some boat, river cruise or whatever, and they start being chased by one, and the way that they kind of run, because they're not weightless underwater, but they're significantly less weighty, and so they can run a little like underwater, and they dive like up out of the water. It's like that fucking scene from Jaws when he comes up on the boat, a little bit like that. Like these giant animals that just kind of breach and like try to get onto the boat or knock it over. It is terrifying.
Damn. So when this cute little baby hippopotamus gets teeth, it's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, she'll be thirsty for blood.
Oh, yeah, I don't care for that. Because right now it's very cute, But yeah, one day it'll be a fucking man-eater.
Yep, hope so.
So there you go, the hippopotamus hour.
Good app. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.
Check in next week when I'm going to spend 2 hours talking about sea otters. I literally could spend 2 hours talking about sea otters.
They're cute beings.
They are.
They're little. Yeah, they're buoyant. Yeah. So, hey, it's hard to explain to someone who never had the experience what a trip to the video store was like back in the day. The shelves were choked with absolutely bizarre crap made on tiny budgets, completely divorced from any recognizable reality, and it was the best. Now, we intend to talk about every one of them. Just before we get into it, here's a little housekeeping. If you want to keep up with us between episodes, you can also find us on Instagram at BringMeTheAxePod. Dave's over there at That Queer Wolf. I urge you to follow us. We're entertaining. We have a good time. And you will too. I guarantee it. I'm also over there on TikTok, dancing and prancing.
Yep, doing the electric slide, doing the Macarena.
The Macarena.
Look, I have exhausted my knowledge of dances. At this
I know. I gotta jump over there and find out what the latest dance is and learn it. Yep. So yeah, look us up over there by name. And if you don't know, we have another show called Bring Me the Axe. On our latest episode covering the 1931 Spanish language version of Dracula is out now. We have a very special guest. Michael Verratti joins us.
Conde Dracula.
And we'll be back next week with a look at Cemetery Man, which should be fun. Mm-hmm. You can also contact us directly at 99centrentalpod@gmail.com with any questions, comments, or suggestions. Do let us know if there's a cheesy movie that you love and would like to hear us give it the business.
I'll tell you what, we've been putting together a list for next year, and it is a lengthy list. So if you got shit you want us to talk about, get it in there.
Yeah, get your requests in because it's gonna be that list is gonna be filled soon. Mm-hmm. Yep. Do it. Yep. And lastly, if you like what you hear, you can subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube now. Search us by name and subscribe if you prefer to consume your podcasts that way. And you'd be doing us a favor by leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So I don't know what you're waiting for.
Yes, please.
Do it.
Please and thank you.
Yep. And if you listen on YouTube, do us a favor and give the episode a like and leave a comment. We love hearing from you guys.
Say, hey, that was a pretty good episode. Thanks for telling me all about Hausu.
Because, I just want to get that all right out of the way at the top of the show because... Jesus Christ. We're going to do our best with this one. This is another Japanese movie. There's no English trailer, but I'm going to give it to you anyways because it's a really fun trailer.
House.
私あなたを救えなかった。
I see in your eyes where tomorrow is hiding in my heart. There's a bell ringing loud at the touch of your lips. Down the rainbow, I'm sliding. Little arrows keep falling as thick as a cloud.
眩しくて怖いのよ。日の光が。かからないわ。故障よ。
Jesus fucking Christ.
Listen, if I saw that for the first time and I had no context for any of it, my first thought would be, am I dead?
Have I passed the second Bardo? Yeah,
What
this is...
the
good
fuck?
God. We're going to sound like we have a head injury going on. Talking
Oh,
about
I would
this
also,
movie.
I would want to see that movie 100%. I would
Jesus
be
Christ.
dying to see it because I friggin' love this movie so much.
It is, yeah. This is going to be us just high-fiving the whole time because this is such a fucking delightful movie. It's a horror movie?
Question mark? A little bit. It's a little bit of a horror movie. It's more of a fantasy.
It is recognizably a horror movie, but our director defies all the conventions by presenting it in the cheeriest of ways, even as people are like being eaten alive and like chopped up into parts. It's like it's just the weirdest fucking movie.
And I think I understand, maybe. I have a theory about why that is, but I think also, so I feel like I have learned a great deal about this movie, or I've come to some realizations about this movie in the last week, but I also think we cannot ignore the reality that Nobuhiko Obayashi, the guy who directed this, is just a fucking weirdo. I guess he's dead now. But
Yeah, he died a few years ago. Yes?
like, I think he's just, in addition to being an avant-garde filmmaker, he's also just a very strange man.
Yeah, I watch a lot of Japanese movies, and I'm fascinated by the sort of weird kind of sci-fi underground that was happening in the 80s, which was also kind of peopled by just weirdos, I guess, like people who were
Of a fringe culture.
It's yeah, because Japan has a very sort of homogeneous culture where it's everybody's kind of moving in the same direction, and outsiders are kind of frowned upon. So when people come along and commit themselves to sort of going against the grain in that way, they really commit to it. They go all in, and you end up with stuff like House, or a movie like Burst City, which is another one that I think we should do at some point, which is another very loud, but where this one's kind of like smooth and easygoing and kind of feels very cheerful. That one's very abrasive and punk rock. But like all of that stuff that was coming into the 80s, the weird freakout stuff like Tetsuo the Iron Man, and again Burst City, and Crazy Thunder Road is another one that I like quite a bit. They all came from this particular moment in Japanese cinema, and it's all freaky, weirdo, crazy shit. And I love it to death. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to just do some facts here?
You gotta.
Oh, we have to. That's our way. So the year was 1977. Year of our Lord. So here were some other movies released that year. The War in Space was released that year.
Okay.
It's another Toho movie. The Exorcist 2 came out.
That is neither a Toho movie nor a good movie.
No. It is
garbage.
Very bad movie.
It is a confused film and a confusing film.
Yeah, people keep trying to sort of re-examine it in the sort of way
Nope.
that like maybe like some other kind of recent reevaluations have happened, and that movie just defies it.
Listen, everybody, sometimes I know that people want to like rediscover things or newly discover things. Like, for a new generation is discovering film. Sometimes movies are just fucking bad.
Yeah.
And you can try as you might, you just can't make them catch.
You can't do it. So also in 77, Equus came out that year. I think I'm saying that right.
Equus, but
Equus?
it's not a horror movie.
No.
I mean, it is a thoroughly upsetting film.
Oh, yes.
I think it's a fascinating movie, and it is a fascinating story, but it is very upsetting.
The Incredible Melting Man also came out in 77.
Less fascinating. Still a little bit upsetting.
Pretty gross. And lastly, that Clint Eastwood movie, The Gauntlet, where I think the best thing about it is the Frank Frazetta poster.
Clint Eastwood is a bad person.
Yeah. So you will notice when we did the Godzilla movies, I tried my best to talk about movies that were released in Japan that year. You'll notice that only one of those 5 was from Japan, and there's kind of a reason. And it plays into the sort of story of this movie.
I think it actually explains almost the entire movie, or at least it explains a great deal about the movie and how it came to be.
Yeah. So let's talk about our cast and crew. Our director is a dude named Nobuhiko Obayashi, whose crazy experimental short films led to a prolific career directing colorful and strange advertisements in Japan, many of them starring American actors, like the cologne spot he did with Charles Bronson.
Which is one of the weirdest things I've ever seen on television.
It is. We'll have to put it up on the up on Instagram so people can see it. It's for a cologne called Mandem. And
I mean, you know what? If someone was like, "Hey, I need a spokesperson for Mandem Cologne," I'd be like, "You need Charles Bronson."
Yes, you do. Yep. All the world loves a lover. So House is his first feature, which led to a mainstream breakthrough. His later work moves away from the sort of high energy freak out of House. But
Have you seen any of his movies? Have you seen any other movies of his?
The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, I've seen.
Because I've only seen this one and that Obsession, the one he made not right before it, but I don't know, 5 or 6 years before it. It's a short movie.
Oh, Emotions.
Oh, is it called Emotions?
It's called Emotions, yeah. That's a good one. It's on YouTube, yeah. Yep. But his movies, despite the fact that they never quite reached these sort of soaring heights of freakiness, he had a sort of signature weirdo touch, and all of his movies kind of have a kind of youthful whimsy about them.
That's fair. He said there's definitely there's fantastical elements to his films.
Yeah. Yep.
Like sort of in that way that who's the guy Guillermo del Toro. Like a lot of his movies have a very fantasy heavy bent to them.
Yeah, for sure.
Not in the same way as Obayashi, but similar.
No. So our cast includes Kimiko Ikegami, who plays Oshari, or as we're known in the English version, Gorgeous.
Gorgeous.
Oshari means fashionable, by the way.
Well, she is fashionable.
She's very fashionable.
Gorgeously fashionable.
Like most of the women in this movie, she came in from the advertisement world, having worked on numerous spots with Obayashi-san.
I think they all did, didn't they?
Yeah, that's mostly
He'd worked with all of them.
Well, the core 7 girls were women that he worked on advertisements with. The rest of the cast were actors. But also she appeared in some TV shows for NHK, which is the Japanese Broadcasting Corporation, like before she did this. But like she was mostly a model and a television actress. She goes on to do a ton of movies and TV, notably appearing in Akira Inoue's 1993 Lone Wolf and Cub reboot. And in 1990, she was awarded Best Dressed by the Japan Jewelry Association.
Fashionable indeed.
Very fashionable. We've also got Yoko Minamida, who plays Auntie. She's the most tenured actor in the cast. This movie falls late in a career, which began in the early 1950s. Led to countless starring roles in Jidaigeki and Chanbara, which are literally means sword fighting movies, and Jidaigeki are like period pictures. So I believe that her most well-known role to Westerners is her appearance in Kurosawa's Yojimbo with Toshiro Mifune. Mm-hmm. That's a great movie too. That's one of my favorites.
Of his or just in general?
Of his.
Okay. Yeah.
I definitely don't go back on it terribly often, but of the Kurosawa oeuvre, definitely one of my favorites. And closing it out, Miki Jinbo, who plays Kung Fu, my favorite of the house girls.
Mm-hmm. Everybody's favorite, no doubt.
No, she is very spirited. Let's see. She was an early figure in the emerging pop idol wave of the 1970s after winning the TV talent show Star Tanjo. And then prior to House, she had small roles in a couple of features, but was best known at the time for a couple of pop hits. After House, she appears in a few more features, but finds most of her success on TV and on stage. Yeah, I believe she's still at work, still very busy.
I will say the person who wrote this movie, I mean, a lot of people kind of had a hand in writing this. I was troubled by this. Is it Chiho Katsura? Is that how you say it?
Oh,
the guy's name?
Yes, I thought you were going to say Chigumi Obayashi, his 11-year-old daughter.
No, but she's in the movie too. It's Chiho Katsura, I believe, is who wrote the actual screenplay for it. Like after they all sort of threw out the ideas, and then I think a bunch of other people did sort of kind of punch up on it. Mm-hmm. But I looked this dude up. A lot of questionable films. One is called The Legend of the Sex Thief in Ido.
Oh yeah,
and I thought, well, that's a weird title. And then I kept going down the IMDb list. A lot of movies with the word rape in the title.
Yeah.
Like, a lot.
Unfortunately, like, Pink Film leads to a lot of that shit.
Which is why I think Pink Film plays a big role in this movie.
Yeah,
Not in the movie itself. But.
Yeah. Unfortunately, sexual violence is, like, a major player in a lot of Pink Film. It's a very unpleasant quality of that.
Yeah, it's
genre.
the thing I really don't like about Japanese movies from that era, from like, I'm going to say mid to late 60s, probably through to the early 80s, is that they have some level of sexual violence in them. And it's like, you could have left all of this out. I know why they didn't.
No. That's the appeal.
I know, I get that. But like, I do not care for that one bit.
Yeah. So we've got some taglines here. And this is my favorite. Witness how 7 beauties were eaten.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. Right to the point. Here's another one, and I'm going to do my best to pronounce this. Hausu wa anata ni ie ni modotte kite watashi to kekkon suru yo ni yobikakete imasu.
Word.
Which means House is calling you to come back home and marry me.
I like that one a lot. I mean, it's clunky as fuck when you say it in English. You know what? I'm going to be honest. It was clunky as fuck when you said it in Japanese,
Well, it was
too.
because I'm a Westerner who doesn't speak Japanese, and it just came out feeling all weird. But I think that I did all right. I feel like I feel pretty good about that one.
I wouldn't have even tried it, so that's fair.
That's why you come here. I got the guts to do that. Nobody else has got the stones to try to pronounce Japanese.
Look, I will do a lot of impressions. Not going to do an Asian one, tell you that much. But
Yeah. So here's some shit to know about this movie, because the road to production on House, pretty fucking weird.
What a weird story.
So, considering how this movie ends up, the production begins in 1975 when Toho puts the call out to its internal talent to produce their own version of Jaws.
Now, I think we should probably clarify, because that is part of the bigger myth of this story, and that does maybe require a little bit of that. They didn't want Jaws itself. They didn't want a knockoff of Jaws. So what was happening in Japan's sort of cinema at the time was that people were, like, younger audiences were losing interest in, like, the samurai movies and the Yakuza movies, and they did not have any interest in, like, the pink films, which, of course, we just said have a lot of sexual violence in them, and they're just generally, they're for, like, middle-aged men, essentially, who are, I assume, wanted to see that, which is troubling to me.
The world of the salaryman is a dangerous place.
I guess when you're sleeping in the train station, you got nothing else to do but go watch gross, violent softcore. Yeah. But that was sort of what had taken over the box office, and what Toho wanted was something that could kind of revitalize the cinema, like Jaws, and like that sort of new school American directors had started to do. Jaws had just come out. It was a fucking huge movie. They wanted something that was accessible to a lot of people, that appealed to younger audiences, but that you could go, like a family could go see it. That was, just sort of a big success all around. They wanted to kind of take back the industry from this kind of sleazy, lowbrow culture that had kind of moved in and taken over, because there was a big gap. Because
at the same time, like, Godzilla had run out of gas, so kaiju was kind of on the ropes. Animation is still kind of an emerging sort of concept. It's kind of
I would put that in the later 80s into the 90s.
A lot of the sort of mecha stuff, like Grandizer and Guy King, those all sort of come out around this time. I think a couple of years later is when Mobile Suit Gundam comes out, and that really kind of takes everything by storm. But yeah, it wasn't like by the time, like, when the 80s rolled around, yes, anime suddenly becomes a major fucking thing.
And I think this is going to be, what is happening in cinema at the time goes a long way to explaining some of this movie, because it's essentially, like a lot of cultures around the world at the time, it's kind of one generation passing off to another one. This is the clash of generations.
Yeah, that's exactly, because I got a note about that, is essentially you've got this new consumer force in Japan that does not have the kind of traumatic hang-ups of the previous, like, post-war generation. Yeah. They're decades removed from that at this point, and they want something that's theirs. And so, Godzilla kind of feels like it was kiddie shit when they were just little kids. They want something a little bit more sophisticated. The Yakuza stuff is kind of running out of gas. Samurai movies don't really hit the way that they used to. They speak to an older culture. They speak to this sort of reverence for the past, whereas what they wanted. I mean, and this is one of the rare things you can actually see parallels in all different cultures. It's like like you said, they want something that's theirs. They want something that feels contemporary or the future oriented, that's flashy and exciting, that feels, this is very material culture. It's a very aesthetic culture. They want that. They don't want this kind of stodgy old samurai movie or things about, Shogun and like shit like that. They don't want to like be focused on the past. They want something that looks to the future and that is uniquely theirs. Yeah. So Obayashi comes along. He was working for an advertisement agency at the time, Dentsu. And by the time he died, he directed 2,000 commercials.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fucking commercials. But Dentsu is producing all of their ads at Toho Studios. And so, there's a lot of commingling of Dentsu's talents and Toho's talents. And so they're aware of him, and his stuff is very, very flashy and high flying. And so they're like, that guy should pitch us a movie. And so he kind of goes into the mix on this. And so he goes home and he asks his daughter, 11-year-old Chigumi, for some ideas. He says, he asks her what's scary to her, essentially. and she brainstorms a bunch of really weird ideas, the stuff that spooked her in her dreams, like nightmares and shit, thoughts that she had from time to time, such as her own reflection in the mirror reaching out and attacking her.
Admittedly, very frightening.
Yep. A watermelon pulled from a well that turned out to be a human head, a house that ate people, and the idea of a piano biting her based on the pain she sometimes felt while practicing piano. All of these things made it into the shooting script.
And into the fucking movie.
Yep.
But also, this is another point that I think maybe needs a little more clarification, because what she's really saying to him, and I think she actually clarified this for him, which is very articulate 11-year-old, is she essentially said, what scares adults is mundane stuff. It's like the realities of life when things can go wrong. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. But she was like, that's not scary for children. This is scary for children. These like things that you have no explanation for that seem totally bonkers. Like that's what young people find frightening, not what happens if we can't afford the mortgage.
Yeah. But yeah.
So he kind of splits the difference a little bit.
Right. So Toho gets the script, and I think that they liked it immediately. They were like, holy shit, this is what we're looking for. But because he wrote it and he wasn't working for Toho, they wouldn't hire him to direct it. So they shop it around to their internal directors, and all the directors,
fucking nobody wanted it.
And everybody looks at it and they're like, what the fuck is this? And they're like, you expect this to be a movie? And so they do this for a couple of years, trying to get somebody to produce this movie. And then what happens is, in the intervening time, Obayashi,
this clever bastard.
This guy is active as hell. He's so busy. He goes out. He has a novelization written. There is a radio play that is produced, I think in 1976. The same year, there is a manga published in Weekly Shonen Magazine. And so there is like a pretty broad public awareness of House as a property. And so Toho is like, holy shit, people want this. So okay.
Yeah, they're like, Jesus, fine, God.
Right. They're like, okay, Obayashi-sama, you can do this. And he jumps in and just runs fucking wild with it.
And I will say that the fact, if I didn't know who he was, and I would assume that he had made music videos. It has that feeling. Like it's this frenetic vignette style.
It's definitely like in I think the Western parallel would be like the late 80s and the 1990s, the sort of emergence of David Fincher and Zack Snyder to some degree, many years later, but people who came into feature films from the advertisement world or the music video world, where everything is snappy because all those people know is cut because they got to be fast and they got to be eye-catching and they got to run 90 seconds. It doesn't always work out, and I think most of those guys are tremendous failures in that respect. It works like crazy here because the baseline is nuts.
It feels like vignettes. The whole thing just feels... I mean, it does have a plot. It's a very, very simple plot. I mean, it's not going to sound like it, but it's a very visual movie, and it just feels like just a series of vignettes kind of woven together with this very kind of straightforward, simplistic plot. And so that's why, as soon as I hear, oh, he made commercials, it's like, okay, that makes a lot of sense because this is just one big set piece after another.
Yeah. Lots and lots of video effects as well. The sort of thing that was appearing in TV commercials at the time, but definitely not in films.
They go big on all of them, though. It's there's in-camera shit that's they go really big on that. There's obviously some some post-production stuff, but each one of them is the intention is not to make it seem like it's real. It's to make it seem like it's not real.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is meant to feel that's the thing is when I try to explain this movie to somebody who's never seen it, because it's still a little niche. This movie only came onto my radar in the last 15 years, maybe.
I think when Criterion when they put it out, it was sort of a big deal because they kind of went all in on it and did a big transfer. But I don't know what it was like before that. I don't know what was available.
Because I'd never heard of it, and by the time that it sort of reached American shores, with a proper Criterion release, like I was pretty deep in Japanese movies, and I had never heard of it. Like, never even heard whispers of it, which is why it really kind of took me by surprise. Because at a certain point, like, everybody was seeing those trailers of, like, you know, the cat picture, like, just spewing blood and a flying severed head and shit like that. Like, it was immediately the sort of movie that I had to see. It was alarmed that I'd never heard of it before. Like, it really does leave an impression.
It's also like whatever we say is not going to do it justice. This is a movie that has to be seen. It is a very, very visual film. It's not like a narrative thing.
Yeah. I've got some notes about some of them, but like it's not going to do it proper justice, I don't think.
I think you can also see what he does in this movie. You can see sort of shades of it or whispers of it later on in certain movies like The Ring and The Grudge. I think are two big ones where you can really see the influence of it.
Yeah, because this movie does draw on like Japanese ghost stories and folklore and stuff about.
But I think also just stylistically, like you can see. I mean, there's a scene in this that you could see, a couple scenes actually, you could see very easily influencing the style of The Ring and The Grudge.
Yeah, I suppose. One last note about Obayashi's career following this movie.
Please tell me it's about Godzilla.
It's about Godzilla.
Yes, the story is insane.
So upon finishing House, Obayashi-san pitched a new Godzilla feature to Toho. In this story, a little girl discovers the dead body of Godzilla, who died of diabetes.
Yeah. It happens.
That would explain a lot, like why Godzilla's so grouchy all the time. He's got low blood sugar.
Yep.
But I say they discover that Godzilla is actually female and was pregnant. And then they telepathically talk to Godzilla, whose name is really Roseanne.
Yeah.
And it instructs them to return the unborn baby Godzilla to its home planet so it can be reunited with its father. And so they turn Godzilla's body into a spaceship. And they fly to this planet. And along the way, they fight a monster that shoots fire out of its tits.
So good. Now, obviously, and I think quite unfortunately, this Godzilla film never made it into production. However, there is a, I guess is it a manga? I don't really know.
I don't think so. I think it's like they might call it like a light novel these days, which is like an illustrated novel.
Did you read it?
No. Is it out there?
Oh, there are a couple chapters. So I kind of fell down a little bit of a rabbit hole with this one. And there is a message board, like a Godzilla or Toho message board. Also, side note, I didn't realize message boards were still a thing.
I know, weird, right? I cross them in my path every now and then, and I'm just like, holy shit, this is still a thing, and this is quite busy.
Yeah. So someone had found it and published or like posted the first couple chapters. I read the first one. It's very difficult to read. It is fucking insane what the plot of this whole thing. But then after that, this is kind of where I fell into the rabbit hole. Is I watching people argue with each other, like passionately. They were like, "Well, this would have been a betrayal to fans," and blah blah blah.
God,
and I'm like,
"Shut up!"
Oh, for God's sake! Look, I get passionate about a lot of dumb shit, but like, God, get off it.
I know.
But yeah, you should find it. I can't remember what the fucking thing was called, but if you Google it, you'll find it.
I can probably look it up pretty easily.
It was super, super weird.
Yeah. There's a website called MangaDex, and they publish a lot of stuff. I believe that the House manga is actually up there. I tended to read it, but I ran out of time. I didn't have time to get around to it, but I'm gonna check that out. The illustrations for this Godzilla sort of novel were done by Katsuhiro Otomo, who created Akira.
That I did not know.
Yep. I don't suppose you have any reviews, because this movie reviewed very, very poorly in Japan.
I don't have any contemporary. There's some stuff from like when it went to Cannes, and it was mostly like, it's weird. Don't know who this is for. It's weird. It was financially very successful.
Oh yeah, people.
It was
a
a
hit.
pretty
People
big hit.
Fucking loved this movie when.
But
it was
critically,
released.
it was not well received because it is very strange, and it is a movie that is in a lot of ways geared towards children, which I find weird and also not weird at the same time, because I get it. I can see where it is. And it made me think of like other like kids shows. I think if you were to say this is a kids movie, people would be like, no, it's not. And in a lot of ways, I think it actually is. And if you think about it, kids television is really, really strange, even now.
I know that the sort of what we would call like Shogun Warriors, the I mentioned them earlier, Guy King, Grandizer, those mecha anime, the original versions of those, like those were out and out meant for kids, like for young children. Like they're very simple, but at the same time, like the original untranslated versions, the stuff that they brought over to America and translated for us, they had to like edit them very heavily and change the stories significantly because they were really, really fucking dark originally. So like, yeah, like this in that context, House makes sense in the sense that it was like they intended for like, you know, families and children to see this.
Yeah, but even like, you know, shit like HR Puff and stuff.
Oh yeah,
like a lot of the stuff in the 70s
stuff is just weird.
A lot of the 70s stuff. A lot of the stuff now is really, really bizarre. Like there were moments where I was like, I feel like I'm watching like skinny Japanese Teletubbies.
It makes sense, definitely, like a little bit, because it has this kind of like storybook quality to it, particularly in the way that it's presented very visually, where almost all of the backdrops are matte paintings. And
they are incredible.
Paintings.
Yeah, it is a little bit like the extent. So once I started digging into all of this stuff, because I'd always watched this and I thought, well, I don't know what this movie is about. It's really fucking weird. And it is jarring and I love it. But now I see it as something I undersold it. Maybe I didn't give it enough credit because there is a story here. There's actually a couple stories going on here. Obayashi, it is also very much worth mentioning, grew up in Hiroshima.
Yeah.
So he was not alive when the bomb fell, I don't think.
No, he was born in the... No, he was born in the 30s. And so, yeah, he was alive for that.
So I don't think it did not directly affect him, but obviously everybody around him would have been very, very much traumatized by that. And I was thinking about it today. There's no... We cannot even conceive of something like that happening. Like, we know what it would be like. We've all seen pictures of it, and it's some of the most horrifying shit I've ever seen in my life. But to actually have that happen is a kind of trauma that we cannot imagine. And so he's sort of growing up in that, like surrounded by that, and that is very much a part of this movie. And so I started to think of it as that kind of like a tension between these two generations, about the ones that had been through the war and the ones that hadn't and didn't want to talk about it anymore.
Right. Yeah. Because even though like we're the character of Auntie, she carries something with her that he omits the entire, like the bombing thing completely. It's instead it's sort of swapped out with like his plane went down in war.
But like, there are visual cues to it though.
There is like a scene of the like nuclear tests at sea. So yeah, like he's definitely pointing to that sort of thing. But like her character, the fact that she can't seem to like let go of something and is kind of locked trapped on Earth is a bit of a parable about that. Because I'm sure that in his experience with it, that particular like that kind of like horrible experience is something that I am sure everybody carried with them and could not let go of, but also couldn't really talk about.
Right.
And it sort of turns into it becomes sort of like a parallel of a ghost story on its own, just a very subtle sort of ghost story in the way that like Japan is kind of haunted by this thing that they don't seem to ever really kind of directly engage with until decades later.
And even then it's questionable.
Yeah.
But you also see the way that this group of girls sort of reacts to that story it's not mocking and it's not exactly dismissive, but it's very juvenile the way that they conceive of it. And it's sort of like, oh, right, that. Like and we'll get to it in the actual story, but like when she's talking about what happened to her aunt, they romanticize it in a way that like the aunt clearly does not. And I'm sure anyone who lived through all this stuff would not. You know, they say things like, oh, you know, Kung Fu is more manly than those soldiers. And it's like this sort of very juvenile way of understanding something when you don't take it very seriously because you have no direct connection to it. Yeah. And that's like, that is where I started to see this movie in that way of like, there is this tension between these two cultures and neither one of them really gets the other. And they don't have to, and they don't really want to. They just sort of want them to shut up.
Yeah. I had never really thought of it about that watching the movie, but yeah, there very much is that tension between these two generations that one of them just is so removed from this one landmark occasion that sort of came to define an entire generation in Japan.
You know, it'd be like right now, if someone like, you know, trying to explain 9/11 to, you know, a 12-year-old. Like they understand what it is, but
my kids have a very strange understanding of 9/11 because they were born after it, and like it's only this thing that like, you know, comes up on the internet all the time, you know, and so they have no idea what that was like, and so they only have this kind of secondhand experience with it, which skews the way that they come to understand it.
Yes, and I think what Obayashi does so well, and what makes this such a successful movie is that he's able to walk the line almost perfectly in that he is representing both sides in a way that is respectful and I think a way that feels authentic and I think this maybe I have a note here that's mentions John Carpenter and Deborah Hill in that, you know, he grew up in this sort of post-war era. He probably has a lot of trauma because of that, but he also took the time to ask not just a child, but his daughter, what she was interested in. So he's sort of listening to both sides and trying to represent both sides. And he does that very well, I think. And it comes across, even if you don't really understand what he's saying or what's happening, there is still this idea that like, oh, he's treating both sides respectfully. You might not understand what he's saying or why or what the story is, but you don't get the sense that either he's like, oh, here's a movie for kids. Aren't these old people really annoying? Or here's a movie for adults. Aren't these kids fucking ridiculous? Because the answer to those questions, both are yes.
Yeah. Also, a thing that constantly comes up when I watch this every time is I always wonder what effect Monty Python had on this. Because there is so much of that style in this. When this movie gets silly, it gets fucking silly. It gets fucking
slapstick silly. Yeah. I see that. I have more of an Italian vibe from it. Like I see a lot of like what Argento was going to do in the late 70s. And it's sort of around the same time as this. You know, there's a bit of Suspiria in the coloring.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of that kind of big physical, goofy comedy that you see in like Italian sex comedies and stuff like that. You know, where a guy gets a bucket stuck on his ass and it's like a major plot point. Like I see a lot of Italian cinema and I don't know to what extent they would have had access to any of that stuff. He would maybe some, but not a lot.
Like Gorgeous's dad specifically says, like, I just got back from working in Italian movies. Yeah. You know, like, so yeah, like there was a connection there.
And I think also I read something about how he was really influenced by like French New Wave.
Yeah.
Which I can see that as well.
Because everybody at the time was.
Yeah. There's a lot of like dreamy qualities to this. It's very abstract in certain places. And some of it I think just doesn't make any fucking sense because it's not supposed to. I think some of it is, he is a very visual person and that's how it comes across. That's just what he wants to show you.
Right, but it wasn't born in a vacuum necessarily because there is a concept in Japanese like fiction and in art particularly called eroguro nonsensu, which is erotic grotesque nonsense. And it's a whole thing. Like there's books and there's manga and there's anime and there's movies and it all has this kind of dreamy stream of conscious, like 1 foot in a nightmare world where it's also
tentacle porn.
Not necessarily that, no, because that's way more like a sort of fantasy version of the pink film stuff that was happening. This is a lot less violent, a lot less. It's more like this is the Jungian shadow side sort of expressing itself in art. So it's like I said, it's grotesque. It has a sexiness about it that's kind of hard to put a finger on, but it still sort of registers as that. This definitely has its roots like deep in that movement.
Mm-hmm. There's also a lot of, like I said, a lot of fantasy. This follows a pretty standard fantasy plot, like what are they called? Like not urban legends. Old stories. You read them to kids.
Folklore.
Yeah, but like
fairy tales.
Yes, that. Thank you. Jesus Christ! Like I had a stroke there. It follows that in a lot of ways, and there's a bit of a big bait and switch at the beginning, but it still has that very kind of fantasy fairy tale story of like beautiful girl goes to house, brings friends, 7 dwarf friends.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's pretty stock kind of boilerplate stuff in a lot of ways, but then he kind of fucks with it in a way that, I mean, maybe Japanese audiences saw it coming, but I didn't.
Yeah. I'll talk about like yokai and the sort of folklore tradition when we get to it, because like yokai plays is very central to like basically the Japanese fairy tale cycle.
They are ghosts.
Those are more like fairies. If there's a parallel.
Because there's a cat ghost too, isn't there?
Bakeneko?
Yes, Bakeneko.
Bakeneko, which is also called Kaibyo is what it's also called, which is like strange cat. But yeah, we'll talk about that too, because I got notes about that I think are fascinating as hell. Yeah. Shall we?
Yeah.
All right.
Why not?
Oh boy, here we go. We open on an animated title card, which announces that we are about to watch a movie called House.
And it is some electric company shit. Like,
hey, you guys.
Yeah, it's really like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Yep. But then the O in House has teeth and spits out a human arm. Mm-hmm. So we cut to a monochromatic shot of our leading lady Gorgeous in a veil, surrounded by candles as her friend Fantasy takes photos of her. So yeah, again, lots of video effects, weird shit going on here. There's way more to it than just the simple sort of story shit that I'm talking about. Like there's so much going on.
Now, are they supposed to be in high school, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Put a pin in that one, everybody.
Oh boy, yes. So they discuss their plans for the upcoming summer vacation. Gorgeous is going to her dad's villa for the summer, while Fantasy and her friends are going to cram school, and they'll be joined by Fantasy's maybe boyfriend, Togo-sensei, who is their teacher, I think.
Not okay. Mr. Toho, definitely getting a lot of red flags. So apparently in the radio play, they explain that where they're really going is to his sister-in-law's, like, summer house, I guess.
Because that's sort of, he's going to show up and be like, sorry, my sister's pregnant, having a baby, can't go there.
Yeah, so you sexy young girls can't come. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's pretty fucked that, like, there is a very serious implication that she is having sex with her teacher.
Yeah. The relationship dynamics between adults and children in this movie, it doesn't end there, unfortunately.
No. Don't like it.
No. So they run into their gym teacher in the hall, and they tease her about her upcoming arranged marriage.
And she says, how did you know about that? And they say, Mr. Togo told us. And I thought, Mr. Togo really shouldn't be sharing so much personal information with people.
No, Togo-sensei, you got to cut the shit, man. This is fucked up. No. So there's a bunch of weird, heavily affected shots of Gorgeous and Fantasy sort of prancing around to school to a jaunty tune. And then they say goodbye, maybe for the summer. Expect a lot of question marks as I talk about this movie, because I'm already on the edge of a stroke.
There's a thing, and I don't want to make a generalization. I'm probably going to, but because I don't know how else to say it. But like, there's a weird infantilization of girls in Japanese media, maybe a little bit more from this time than maybe now, but definitely still. And I find it kind of distressing and off-putting.
Yeah, and again,
I'm trying not to be judgmental, because it's like, that's not my culture.
Well, here's the thing: you're not wrong And in a lot of the research that I was doing of this the term came up that I am unfortunately familiar with. It's called lolicon, which is like Lolita complex, is what it means.
Okay, I know that one, and I don't like that at all.
That is a thing that just happens in movies a lot, where like there is this kind of blurring between age and sexuality, where like young women meant to be very, very young are sort of portrayed in a sort of adult with an adult sexuality. I don't get it. I definitely do not approve of it. It's some weird shit.
To quote the horse from Ren and Stimpy, no sir, I don't like it.
Don't like it. No. So when Gorgeous gets home, she finds her dad home a day early from his job in Italy composing music for movies. Yeah.
And they're on the balcony, and I fucking love the balcony in this house.
It is, yeah. It's really there's this really awesome like rattan chair.
Yeah, but like, hey, it's like one of those ones that hangs, like so it has like a base and like hangs from a chain. Like I am not a heavy person, and I would absolutely not sit in it.
Yeah.
But it also has this insane matte painting background, because most of the backgrounds in this movie are matte painting, and they're all stunning.
Yeah.
Because I really, really appreciate matte paintings. This one is like this big romantic sort of, I don't even know what you call it.
It looks like early Technicolor Hollywood. Like
all
of the backdrops in Gone with the Wind and shit like that. Yeah. So like again, the music in this scene is also, it's fucking crazy. It sounds like a piano track from like a Bugs Bunny cartoon.
So the music for this is mostly by a band called, I think they're called Godiego.
Godiego, yeah. So they're named after like an emperor.
And they were like his friends, but they were a real band. And so they do.
Going back to that sort of parallels to Argento, kind of in the same way that like Argento just brought Goblin in because like he saw them and thought they were fucking great.
Yeah. So I think he had done like, maybe he had used them in a commercial or something, but like he liked them a lot. He brings them in. The soundtrack of this movie is insane.
Yeah.
Like I have listened to it several times just on its own, and it is real bizarre because it does not stick to one genre.
No, it's actually Godiego do these sort of pop song numbers.
Yeah. There's another person, the
Watermelon guy is the composer.
Yes, and he did a lot of he did a Liquid TV music for a Liquid TV show.
No shit.
Yeah. I mean, I looked at most of the stuff he'd done. I'd never heard of it. It was all Japanese. But, like, there was some stuff that was a little bit bigger, and I'd heard of some of that.
Do you remember what the Liquid Television was?
It was Running Man.
Oh, I don't remember that one.
I think it was just maybe, like, a one-off. But, like, you know, when they would do, like, the 15-minute... Like, where Aeon Flux came from. Like, when they would do the 15-minute shorts.
Yep.
God, this is a super Gen X episode so far. Let's see how many early 90s references I can make.
Yeah. Also, worth noting, when they shoot this scene, they shoot it through a very strangely segmented window.
Yes. Which I can't tell if that's on purpose or not. I feel like everything in this movie is very intentional.
Is very deliberate.
And it gives a very odd vibe to the whole thing. Like it's really hard to explain how it looks and why it's strange. It's partially because of the conversation they're having.
Yeah, like very pastel color palette. All the shots are very gauzy. Star filter would be like would not be inappropriate here. Like it's that kind of a shot. So Dad sits Gorgeous down and explains something very important. He has a new girlfriend that he'd like Gorgeous to meet, and out comes a woman who I would describe as alarmingly effervescent.
Yes, and she is every single time. Is there Ryoko? Is that her name?
Ryoko is her name.
Ryoko. Every single time they show her, she is going to be shot in slow-mo, with wind whipping her hair back and her scarf sort of flying up into the air. It is so bizarre.
She glides through every scene. It's almost like she's moving, but her legs aren't moving. Like she's on a platform or something.
She's on a skateboard. And they're just pushing her really slowly, pulling her along on a skateboard. But like, I think what we're supposed to pick up from all this is that she's very like good and pure.
Yeah.
Like she's so well-intentioned and beautiful and wonderful and lovely. Unfortunately, Gorgeous does not agree.
No. Gorgeous.
And it might actually be the way that her dad frames it, because he's basically like, she's going to be your new mom now. And I thought, my note says, Dad, that's probably where you went wrong in this conversation, because right after that, he says she's surprisingly good at cooking and the other stuff too. The implication being, so I don't even need you anymore. And then he says something
which is kind of appropriate to how this kind of thing, this whole scene sort of plays out, because it turns out that like Gorgeous's mom died like 8 years ago, and
because he says like, well, it's been 8 years since your mother died, and the sort of the what we're getting is like, can't you get over it? Get you ready to move on.
Yeah, Ryoko wants to be friends with Gorgeous, who's, as Dave said, having none of it, especially since she's going to marry Gorgeous's dad and become her mother. It seems only natural that her dad would remarry. Again, it's been 8 years. Gorgeous is pissed off and runs away, declaring that she won't go to the villa with them, and retreats to her room where she spins in place like Wonder Woman, instantly changing her clothes.
Yep, just cause.
Yeah.
She says, I'm not going to go. I'm going to bully Dad.
Yeah. She addresses her mother's photo, who is identical to Gorgeous. And then goes through a series of pictures of her and her dad, or maybe it's her mother and her dad. It's really hard
I think it's her mother and her dad.
Because
I think she's like looking at the evolution of their relationship, because eventually a child shows up in the photo.
Okay, yeah. Because like the way that I see this is, because the woman in the photo looks like Gorgeous, I've always understood this to be that, like, in the absence of her mother, she sort of took on her mother's role. And so the sort of dynamic between her and her father is a little alarming.
Yeah. And I think the girl who plays Gorgeous is the one who is actually playing her mother in these other parts.
Yes. Yeah, because that's the whole thing is, oh, you look just like your mother.
Yeah.
We're going to keep hearing about. But yeah, basically every woman's relationship with a man in this movie is just fucked.
Yeah.
So fucking weird.
Again, I'm trying not to be super judgmental, but it's like, when it's gross shit like that, it's kind of hard not to be like, can you guys just not do that part? Can you do all the weird piano eating children thing and not do the weird sex stuff?
Yeah.
And the answer, unfortunately, is no.
No.
No, they won't do that.
So
I feel like kind of going back to that fairy tale concept, this feels very Alice in Wonderland to me.
okay.
With the cat and the sort of like, because there's a or like kind of how Labyrinth, like when she kind of disappears into the Labyrinth world, where she's so upset. And she's in her bedroom, but her bedroom feels like a little bit transformed. And everybody's energy is always weird and a little bit wrong. Like she's supposed to look really angry and upset, but she never looks upset. She's like smiling half the time.
Right. Like when Melody is in the piano, like she looks like she's in pain and agony, but she's laughing.
And then, we'll talk about that when we get there, because that's another time that I noticed it, but then I noticed something else, and I don't know. But like, there's a lot of like, there's fantasy and fairy tale, but it's never quite right. It always feels a little uncanny valley.
Yeah. While reminiscing, Gorgeous settles on a wedding photo of her mother and aunt. So now, back at school, we meet the rest of the house girls. There's Mac, who is the hungry girl trope in a Japanese movie, which I do not understand this. It is in comedies. It is in all the weird sort of dark and dire animes. Like there's a girl who's always hungry in Attack on Titan.
Yeah, but doesn't that feel like weirdly 70s, 80s to you? Like there's always a fat kid in a friend group.
I can't really think of Western movies that do that as frequently
but I think it's
Japanese ones do.
Chunk in the Goonies. It's someone who's always, it's usually a fat kid. And it's always
Squad.
like, and he's always talking, Horace, he's always talking about food. He's always eating something. And I wonder, just like in Japan, are you just much less likely to find overweight young women at the time?
Oh, but yeah,
I don't know the answer to that.
Calling her fat, she is not fat.
Yeah, like I just think like maybe that, or either that, or they didn't want to get an overweight person to put in the movie. I don't know the answer to this. I'm wildly speculating, which is pretty much all I'm going to do from here on out. But
we've also got Prof, the smart one. There's Melody, the musician. Sweet, who is helpful and sweet. And Kung Fu, who is
Who is-
fearless and tough.
A total badass.
Total badass.
I
She's
love
the
when they,
fucking
they
best.
even take off Prof's glasses at one point, and they're like, "You'd look so pretty if you just took off your glasses." And I thought, fuck you.
Yeah.
But then she's like, "Yeah, but then I wouldn't be able to see, so who cares?"
In your face, Suito.
Yep, love it.
Yep. So enter Toho Sensei. He's cool and manly, and he drives a dune buggy.
Oh, I don't like it.
No, Togo's
Feels
sisters-
real groomery to me.
He's such a fucking weird. Because here's the thing, he is objectively not cool and manly,
No. Don't like it.
and his dune buggy sucks. I hate it. Togo's sister is having a baby, so the inn that they'll be staying at cram school won't be open. Gorgeous shows up to save the day with a change of plans. She's not going to the villa and has instead chosen to go out to her mother's hometown and see her aunt, who she hasn't seen since she was a little girl.
Yeah, her aunt, who she's met one time, she's like, "Hey, I've got an idea. Haven't talked to this woman in 10 years, but why don't we just show up at her house? Me and 7 of my fucking
Hey, auntie,
friends."
I'm going to bring my 7 friends.
And she was like, sure, why not?
This is fortuitous. So we flash back to her writing a letter to her aunt, going out to visit her, and her aunt gladly welcoming them all. Then, from out of nowhere, a cat appears with flashing eyes. She names it Blanche and keeps it, I guess.
Yeah. Which, again, you can't just take it. You can't just take a cat. It's not your cat.
This,
Or is it?
So, yeah, the cat is something from Japanese folklore called kaibyo, which means strange cat. And in this case, it is a bakeneko, which is a very specific type of yokai that can transform into a woman.
And they have multiple tails, if I understand correctly.
Yes.
This was all very confusing to me because I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, because there's also like foxes that have many tails and stuff like that. It's all a little loose, you know. But yeah, yokai are like I mentioned earlier, they're like fairies in like a Western sense. Like they're all kind of monstrous. They're all kind of out to get you. Some of them are sneakier than others, and others are not terribly harmful. There's one called oh god, I forgot the Japanese name of it, but it's called a butt eye is how it translates, and it's essentially a dude bent over with his like kimono pulled up, but instead of a butthole, he has an eyeball.
Okay. I don't like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but like that's the general vibe of yokai. They're all like fucked up and strange, and there's lots.
And
of
I mean, it's fair to say because like we are led to believe eventually that this is all the cat's doing. Oh, maybe,
Right.
possibly. We don't get a lot of. There's not a lot of answers. here, but
or the cat is her aunt, maybe.
the cat is not a good thing though.
No, the cat's very bad, but it's a very
Like,
pretty cat.
You get that. See, I don't like cats. You're such a fucking weird cat lady. Childless cat lady. Except, you know.
Yeah. The next day, in an extreme golden hour shot, Gorgeous receives a letter from her aunt inviting her and her friends to come and visit.
And it just magically appears in the mailbox. Like it literally poofs into the mailbox.
Yep, with the cat.
Yep.
Elsewhere, Dad's new girlfriend tells him that she plans to follow Gorgeous out to her aunt's place so that they can talk it out.
And listen, lady, I get that you are you're eager. You want this to work, but you got to back off a little bit.
Give her a little space. She'll
This
come around.
feels a little forward.
Yeah. Also, weird sound effects in these scenes. Like when Gorgeous goes to get the letter, there is a very loud baby crying. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I think that it is fair to say this is a horror movie. I do feel like it is in a lot of ways, and especially much later on. But like, there's just a lot of really jarring shit that like is meant to kind of be off-putting, or to like signal
it's supposed
something
to kinda
is
keep
wrong.
you on the back foot the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next morning, Toho Sensei wakes up in a weird, idyllic and pastoral setting. Making his way to the street, he nearly trips over Blanche the cat, falls down the steps, getting his butt stuck in a bucket, sliding all over the street in a comical stop-motion scene.
And then what turns out to be a musical number, a multilingual musical number that feels lifted from Sesame Street by way of Broadway.
Yeah.
I don't really know how to describe what's happening in this moment, but this is one of those parts where it feels like it's intended to appeal to children.
Oh God, yeah. Like that's definitely some shit that would make a child laugh. Like,
Yeah. Because this is the only part of the movie where I'm like, get this shit out of here. This is fucking stupid.
yeah. The bucket situation's going to make Toho late for the train out of the city, represented by an obvious matte painting of a city behind a train station. He has to get the bucket off before he can do anything, so he'll meet them all out the country later. A kid happily hits the bucket with drumsticks.
Yeah, this is Blanche's way of being like, hey, man, maybe you shouldn't be meeting them in the country later.
Yeah.
Maybe you shouldn't be going with them at all because you're an adult man.
The ladies, meanwhile, are seen off by the band Godigo, who did all the groovy pop music for the soundtrack.
And enthusiastically, too. I mean, they
yeah.
are.
Yeah. They get on the train as all this weird shit is happening in the background. Gorgeous kid.
Max eating 2 cheeseburgers.
Yep. There's a couple of cowboys with rifles at the train station.
Yeah, it feels like kind of like that moment in, and this happens a lot in like older Hollywood movies, but like in Blazing Saddles, where they like knock through the walls of the studios, and you just see people like cowboys walking through.
Oh,
and
right.
Like showgirls walking.
The end of Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yeah. Where it's just like, oh, this is just fucking everybody. Like if someone had walked onto the train in like an astronaut suit, I would have been like, yep, that guy's going to the country too, I guess.
Right. So Gorgeous can't find her cat, but it's okay. It's magically already on the train inner seat.
Yeah, it already has a seat. It has its own seat.
Yeah, she's sitting next to a guy who is conspicuously reading a magazine that I stopped and looked up the name of. It's called A Pictorial History of Horror Movies by a guy named Dennis Gifford. Yeah, it's on archive.org. I've got it up in front of me, and I can't wait to read it.
Listen, everybody, go to archive.org. It's the greatest website on the whole of the internet.
Yep. And then we transition to an animated scene of the train traveling out to the country. Mm-hmm. Her friends ask Gorgeous to tell them all about her aunt, so she gives them the rundown, but the perspective switches to second person, and the memories are portrayed as a silent film about her aunt's fiancé, who was a doctor conscripted into the Japanese army in 1941. Now,
which the whole thing is a very odd, like shifting perspectives like that from first person to what is essentially just them watching a movie.
Yeah.
That we are also watching with them.
Yep.
Meta. Real meta.
Stylistically, I love it. He
Cool.
promises to come back, but his plane was shot down over the Pacific and he never returned. Her aunt refused to let go of his promise and carried it with her for the rest of her life. She is portrayed carrying Blanche the cat around in her youth.
And so I think this is obviously this part of the story is it's like central to the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
The feeling of loss, but I think it probably would have been too much to say he was killed in the bombing or something like that's a little heavy-handed. And I think this is a much more sort of subtle way of like the everyday losses of the war. Like one person's plane goes down. So say a bombing happens, like, yeah, that fucking destroyed 2 giant cities, thousands and thousands of people died. But like, this is the shit that happens every day in war. And so it's just an ordinary loss that when if you were to hear something like that now, you'd be like, yeah, that's terrible, but.
Right. Because, the atomic bombings really do kind of loom largely over everything, understandably. There were things that were happening kind of on the margins that are not talked about in the West in particular. As the Navy was approaching those southern islands, they were also routinely launching bombing runs, like firebombing of Dresden type bombing runs over those islands. So they were also doing like unspeakable damage even without the atomic bombs. Like again, watch Godzilla -1. Like that's all about that shit.
Yep. It's just it's a mundane loss I think it's the mundanity of the loss that makes it somehow easily dismissed.
I get, you know what it is it's because we see him in the plane, but he's like a co-pilot. And so the pilot gets like riddled with bullets.
Yeah, and he's just like casually in the back.
And he's just like chilling. Like no expression on his face as the plane crashes. Like that's kind of his way of sort of signaling that.
And this is also where they say, "Oh, the soldiers are so manly." One of them says that, probably fantasy, because she is thirsty. But then another one says, "Kung Fu's more manly than them." And it feels to me, and I could be just reading way too much into this, but like it feels like a weird kind of youthful dismissal of this real tragedy.
Yeah.
That was the tragedy that was war. Because I think pointing people towards Godzilla -1 is probably appropriate, because that is the movie that the first time I saw a Japanese film so directly take on this idea of like, nobody fucking wanted this. Nobody wanted to be a part of this, to be a kamikaze pilot, to do all that. Like, nobody wanted to go to war like this. And it was just really tragic. And so it's this young culture that's like, yeah, we've heard it all before. And it's kind of a way of like, it's not directly being like, shut the fuck up. It's more just sort of being like, oh, that again.
Yeah.
And it's going to, and the consequences of all of that history are going to eventually be their undoing. But they're so kind of blasé about it. I don't know. I feel like that's significant.
Yeah, no, you're onto something with that. So yeah, when their train magically turns into a bus.
Okay, glad you caught that too.
Yep, with a white cat on the side, they arrive at their stop in the country.
This part is probably one of the best parts of the whole movie.
Unsure of where to go. Because also, they get off the bus, and there is a map painting behind them. And then we cut to a wide shot, and it is just them standing against this, like, very small map painting against like a natural countryside background. It's such a cool shot.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Unsure of where to go, they follow the cat through the idyllic Japanese countryside.
The other thing that you didn't say about the story that they watch is that she's also telling them about her mother getting married.
Right.
And so
I did forget about
the aunt's loss is kind of juxtaposed with her mother's happiness and this sort of beautiful wedding that turns into a beautiful family and a beautiful life, and so on and so forth. While the aunt's life is sort of nothing but trauma and this like inability to move on from that trauma. So she just kind of lives in it while her sister has this kind of flourishes and has this beautiful life.
Yeah.
She also looks exactly like her sister.
Yes. Yeah. So they walk through a spooky forest and end up at a produce stand which sells watermelons.
The biggest fucking watermelons I've ever seen in my life.
Big, beautiful watermelons.
And he is a lecherous watermelon salesman.
Yeah. Yeah. The creepy farmer points them in the direction of the house they're looking for. Again, obvious mad against a blue screen.
Mm-hmm. It's so great. I love it.
Yeah. When they arrive, they find the place a little broken down, and her aunt, a beautiful old woman in a wheelchair, answers the door, carrying Blanche the cat in her lap.
But before that, they're all just standing there, like, shouting ridiculous shit at a stranger's house.
Yep.
Like, easy, girls. You've never met the lady before.
Right. And when she shows up, I got to ask, is it a wig?
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
And not a good one.
So now Fantasy's camera breaks when she tries to take a picture of the aunt. And also, Mac comes running in with one of the watermelons from before.
Mm-hmm. And they think she stole it.
Yep. When they go in the house, there's a sudden freak out as they turn on the light. And a crystal falls from a chandelier, skewering a lizard on the floor. But Kung Fu kicks another away.
And they say, you're so cool, Kung Fu. And I thought, why isn't anybody freaked out that the chandelier just tried to kill them?
I know. I love that Kung Fu has a theme.
Yeah.
Like whenever she flies into action, there's like a song that plays.
And this is when the movie like starts to get really frenetic in a way that's kind of hard to follow.
Yeah. So Melody locates the piano, begins to play as the girls check the place out, finding a plastic skeleton which terrifies them. And man, I love that skeleton.
That terrifies them, not the chandelier almost killing them.
Nope. They also wonder how Auntie could take care of the place on her own all these years, being in a wheelchair and whatnot. She chases the notion away, ominously announcing that it'll be fine now that she has 7 young girls in the house.
That's right. And then they roll her into the next room and someone very obviously chucks the cat into her lap.
I was just about to say that. Yep. In the kitchen, Auntie talks to the appliances as if they were alive, explaining that she's been alone for so long that she talks to them just to talk. But they shake when she addresses them as if they hear her. We also find that the refrigerator hasn't worked in years. So
then Kung Fu just starts kicking the shit out of everybody and like all the ladies' stuff in the kitchen.
Yep. So Mac's going to have to find another way to chill the watermelon. Out in the garden, they tie a rope around the watermelon and they place it in the well to chill it.
The garden outside is my second. It might actually be my first favorite set.
Very cool.
It has
set.
that.
I do love it.
That again, like it feels like a stage play almost. It's a very contained space.
Yeah. In the house, Kung Fu kicks a panel off the wall for some fucking reason. Mice literally leap out at the girls. A good time was had by all. Mm-hmm. Oh, also, Auntie wears dark glasses because the sunlight frightens her, like Dracula.
Yeah, they look a little bit like those transitions lenses that make everyone look a little bit like a serial killer.
Yeah, but yeah, this was the moment where I was like, this movie is a lot like Dracula. Where they show up to this castle, this haunted, like, rundown haunted castle. It's run by this person who seems to get younger with every person that she eats.
Yeah, he's going hard at the old dark house trope, the haunted house. Like there's a lot of like gothic tropes in this that he sort of plays with a little bit. He never really commits to any of them.
Away after a little while. Like,
and I think
this version of Auntie eventually vanishes.
Yeah, that's like, if I have a criticism of this movie, and it's a hard movie to criticize because it's so fucking weird, but like if I had one, it's that he kind of abandons a lot of things when they don't work very well.
Yeah.
But he doesn't like go back and edit anything out. It's just like, sally forth, everybody.
Yeah. So the girls eat dinner, and then Matt goes to get the watermelon. Sweet does that like right eye, left eye thing while looking at Prof. Fantasy notices sometime later that Mac never came back, so she goes to the well to check on her.
Yes.
Yeah. So at the well, she doesn't find Mac, so she pulls the watermelon up out of the well. Only it's not the watermelon. It's Mac's severed head.
Yeah. Who, I believe, bites her on the ass.
Yep. You think
and
she's
then
dead,
pukes
but
a bunch of
laughs.
watery blood all over her.
Yep. The head flies around all over the place, eventually biting Fantasy on the ass, and then vomits blood all over the place.
You know, just like it would happen in real life.
Yeah. So now, Fantasy runs into the house to tell the other girls, and along comes Auntie, just a little more vivacious from before.
And then that bitch just gets out of the fucking wheelchair.
Yep. She's feeling so much better, in fact, that she gets out of her wheelchair and walks to the garden to see if Mac's head is in the well. But when they pull the rope out of the well, they find only the watermelon. So they get to eating it. Then Auntie eats the watermelon while Fantasy watches her. She smiles, revealing an eyeball in her mouth. And
again, nobody says anything.
No, everyone assumes that because there's a potato field down the road a bit, Mac must have gone there because she loves baked potatoes. And that's where she is now.
Look, I get it. I like baked potatoes.
Who doesn't like a baked potato?
If I ever disappeared and someone was like, hey, he just went down the street to get some baked potatoes and I was actually dead, I would haunt the shit out of them forever.
Be the most malicious ghost in the world.
Yeah, I just went down to get a baked potato. Fuck you. You didn't even want to go look for me, you lazy bitch.
Yeah. So the girls clean up. Gorgeous goes to take a bath. Prof drinks bloody water without realizing it. Sweet, while looking for the bedding, finds a room containing a doll that calls her name.
Yeah, then the doll is like super like Kathy's Curse doll.
Yeah. I love it. It's just like, it's this little voice. It's like, Sweeto. So while
it has like the glowing green eyes that Kathy's Curse doll has.
Oh God, yeah. While in the bath, she doesn't realize it, but creepy Ure hair creeps all up on her from behind. That being
so
gorgeous.
This is the part that felt kind of ring-ish to me. This
So that's
I know that is like it's not just the ring. I know that's kind of a thing.
Yeah.
In mythology, but it has the vibe of that where it's sort of like it's kind of trying to embrace her in a weird way.
So the long hair in your face thing, the Sadako ghost. That is Ure is what they're called. It's just like ghost that haunts places.
A hair ghost.
And that's how they're often described. Kind of like how in the West for a really long time, like the ghost in the veil that we've kind of come to define as the ghost with the sheet over it, like that thing. That's like their version of the ghost with a veil on it. And so
Is Kwaidan, I think there's one in that.
Yep. Kwaidan actually means like ghost stories.
Yeah. So I think one of the things in that is this hair ghost. And this is also the scene that has gratuitous nudity that I don't much care for.
Yeah, there's a bit of that in this movie.
And I think the reason I really didn't like it was that I read something that was like, they did the nude scene and he was like, oh, she should have her own nude scene. She looks so good, nude. And I was like, oh God.
Yeah, it was, it's the woman playing Auntie is they were like, all right, gorgeous, get them clothes off. And she was like, oh, I'm not comfortable with this. So like Auntie.
And then Harvey Weinstein was like, you want to work, don't you?
Yeah. but then he sees Auntie naked and he's like, you know what? You get a nude scene too.
Yeah. I don't like that again. It doesn't sit well with me.
No, I don't like it. So while, outside, Kung Fu is chopping logs, which suddenly come to life, flying all over the place and attacking her. So yes, once again, we get that awesome Kung Fu theme, and she's
fucking ready for it.
Kicks the shit out of him. Oh, and her skirt flies off, and it'll stay off for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, there it is again. What I like about Kung Fu is that she does feel like a bit of a nod to samurai and Yakuza movies.
This is about the time when like Sonny Chiba's movies are starting to get big. So like Street Fighter is like kind of hot and happening. So,
like there's like you get a little like Lady Snowblood, obviously not quite as classy, but there's just this like badass woman who can just take care of herself.
Oh yeah, definitely. What is it? Not Lady Snowblood. This is more like Sex and Fury, that version of Lady Snowblood, which has a lot of sex and nudity in it.
Yeah, a lot of leather pants, if any pants, really.
Yeah. Now that Sweet is missing, Auntie enters the scene again, now dancing around. Ominously.
Yeah, this is when shit goes off the fucking rails. I can't believe I'm saying that now, but like this is when it really goes.
It really
like,
kicks into high gear here.
Yeah, because this is when she starts like creeping along the rafters and sort of like breaking the fourth wall in a way that's really unsettling.
Yeah. Yeah, she's like dancing around, ominously telling Fantasy not to worry about Mac, that she'll see her again. Then she opens the refrigerator and dances inside it.
Yeah, and then the cat starts kind of like meowing along to like non-diegetic music.
Yep.
Like a normal movie.
Yeah, again, Fantasy is the only one to see it. So now, there's a montage of shots of Auntie dancing around the house, on the support beams overhead, with the plastic skeleton.
It's so bizarre because this woman she's a very good actor, and I get the feeling that she's sort of she like brings a little gravitas to the film, and yet she goes all in on this bizarre performance, and I really like that.
I do. You know what it is one of the things that also kept popping up in the research was Obayashi kept a super cool vibe on the set. And was like always playing Godaigo's music, and like everybody was like having a good time and shit. So it really does kind of become reflected in the way that the movie is presented, because as I'm describing this, like this all sounds very dire and horrifying, but I assure you, it's all very cheerful and colorful.
Yeah.
Like
which I think makes it more off-putting, because it's like, why are they all singing along while like someone's like being ground up in a grandfather clock?
Yep. Yeah. Then Auntie eats some food, among the food being human body parts. Some editing tricks, video effects, the cat dancing on the piano and meowing along with the waltz that's playing. Then Gorgeous retreats to her aunt's room, which is a collapsed room grown over with trees and leaves and foliage and shit. And
yet nobody is freaked out by anything at this point. It's all just normal. It's par for the course at Auntie's house.
Yep. She sits down at the mirror looking at all the combs for her hair and their makeup. And then her reflection eventually turns into her aunt, then back to her own reflection. But now it's smiling back at her. Then her reflection gets fangs. Then it turns back into her aunt. And then the mirror begins to crack and bleed around the broken edges.
It is a really cool moment. And because all of the effects in this, most of the effects in this are pretty low tech.
Yeah, these were like early video effects.
Yeah, there's like some video effects. There's like a little bit of rotoscoping here and there.
Yep.
But a lot of it's just like the fact that they don't really care how it looks, or I mean, I'm sure they do if it's a very aesthetic movie, but like that there's not this desire to trick you. It's more just to foster that fantasy vibe.
Yeah, because
it all works.
The sort of I would say the production design on this movie is very reminiscent of a children's book.
Yes.
And so a lot of these kind of they're pretty janky blue screen effects, but they still look very appropriate in the context.
Yeah, it's almost like they, it's sort of, think about like Herschel Gordon Lewis movies. Like movies like where they're like, look, there's no fucking way we can make any of this look realistic. So we're just going to lean into the fact that we're so low tech and lo-fi on this. And that's going to be our thing. And it's almost, and I'm sure this is Toho, so they had money, but I think he was probably just like, no, I'll make this work. It's going to be great, everybody. And they were like,
right. Because
okay.
there were times during the production when the crew were like, hey, Sensei, what are we doing here?
He was like, don't worry about it. Yeah. Just don't worry about it. Go have a sandwich. I got this. I got this.
Yeah. So, but then after all this happens, Gorgeous's own face sort of cracks and falls away, revealing a fire behind it.
But there's a way, where I was going with that is like the fact that it is so low tech kind of aids in the creepiness of it.
Yeah. It sort of feels like, it feels as though like a child made it.
Yeah.
And there's this movie is very childlike, so it all really just kind of fits together, despite the fact that it looks a little weird.
And I think what adds to that is when you think this is kind of for children too.
Yeah.
And this is shit that like if it was it was an American movie, someone would look at that and be like, I would not show that to children. That is a little bit unnerving.
Right.
And they would not understand what's happening because I am not a child and I don't understand what's happening. And I was like, think that's kind of what makes it a little bit off-putting is it's like, what is this?
Yeah.
This is a little bit weird and a little creepy. Mm-hmm. It works.
Yeah. So meanwhile, Melody sits down at the piano, begins to play the song that Auntie left out for her while the plastic skeleton dances.
And she's very good.
Mm-hmm.
It is a beautiful tune.
It is a very nice little motif we're going to hear throughout the movie.
Mm-hmm.
We see Sweet back in the room with the doll and are reminded that only a witch cat can close the door behind it as Blanche the cat enters the room and the door closes behind her.
Yep.
Then shit starts going crazy.
Again.
Melody's piano playing goes nuts. Sweet is attacked by the bedding in the room. Kung Fu, Prof, and Fantasy leap into action. Fantasy finds Sweet being attacked by the futons, while Prof and Kung Fu find Melody, who complains that the piano bit her.
And I'm going to just say straight up, Fantasy sucks. She whines this whole fucking movie. Her and Sweet do nothing but and it's that little girl whining where I'm like, oh God, it goes like a fucking screwdriver to my brain.
Nope. I love Fanta-chan. Yep. They all run back to the room where they find Sweet was attacked, finding only feathers and futons everywhere. But then Melody cries out again, and Fantasy runs back. She comes to a door where a hand slowly beckons to her. It's real spooky, but then the door opens and it turns out that it's Melody. She's in the bathroom and needs toilet paper.
Don't worry, it's just Melody taking a shit.
Back in the bedding room, they don't find Sweet, but they find all of her clothes. And Fantasy gets scared, but Prof reminds her that Togo Sensei is on his way, and being the manly dude that he is, he'll protect her.
Look, I think he is grooming these girls. 100%.
Yeah.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts.
But her fantasy of Togo Sensei is him riding up on a horse, declaring his love for her, his princess, Fantasy, who is also dressed like a princess.
Yeah, this guy's a real jerk, too. He's got that I'm a jerk vibe.
Yes, he does. It's the hat.
It's also the hair.
Yep. He sweeps her up on the horse, and then they ride off together. The end. No, the end. No, the end. When he snaps back to reality, it occurs to the remaining girls that Gorgeous is missing too. She's probably off putting on makeup as usual.
Yeah, don't worry. She's gone off into the forest to juggle?
Yep. So they find her in Auntie's room, but something is wrong with her. She's not herself. The girls remark that Toho is on his way, maybe in a plane. There's a sound effect like machine guns and airplane engines, which preoccupies Gorgeous for a second, implying that it's not Gorgeous anymore, that Auntie has taken over her body.
And this is, again, where it feels like it's that infantilization thing where I feel like a lot of the time, and this doesn't feel intentional, I feel like this is just kind of a cultural thing, they make these girls seem extraordinarily stupid.
Yes. Yeah, because they are dumb all
it's
the
like,
time.
It's
In a way that's a
not
little
just
irritating at
child.
times.
Yeah, it's not just childish. It's like childish and fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Like painfully dumb.
There's a misogyny about it, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, I felt like that was, I was like, I kind of wish that wasn't here too. Like, they're all obviously paper thin stereotypes. And that's kind of the point of them. And
because
you
like
could
their
do
names
that.
are all like, she's the musical one, and that's the pretty one, and she's the smart one. Yeah.
And you could do that without the sexism and misogyny. And I'm asking a lot of a movie that is at this point almost 50 years old. So I'm not gonna ding it too hard, but like it does feel like you didn't have to do that, and it makes them a little less compelling as characters. It also makes them less sympathetic as characters.
Yeah, I suppose. They go to the phone to call the police. Gorgeous insists that she'll be the one to call. And when she picks up the phone, there's only the sound of a couple arguing and screaming on the other end.
She doesn't feel like it's worth mentioning to anybody else, though.
No, because it's important that she tell them all that the phone is out of order. And this is all happening among this like really weird sort of in-camera stuttery effect. Mm-hmm. I don't really know how to describe it. But yeah, Gorgeous leaves with Blanche the cat to get help, leaving Prof, Kung Fu, Fantasy, and Melody behind. They try to leave, but the doors and the shutters all slam shut. Kung Fu tries to karate kick her way out, but it's no use.
Yeah, that's when she says, "Step aside. This is a karate movie."
Yeah. So cut to Toho Sensei stuck in traffic between two huge trucks in his stupid dune buggy.
Oh, you know what? This probably wouldn't happen if you drove a regular fucking car, you loser.
There is something about this scene that's a little emasculating about it. And I don't
I think
really understand why.
But I think they do that throughout with this character, is they make him seem kind of dumb.
Well, they're always like, oh, he's so manly, he's so handsome. And then they show him, and it's like, he's none of these things.
Yeah. He's like kind of like a greasy Gomer Pyle kind of.
Yeah. So the girls decide that the only explanation for the doors closing on their own like that is that there must be a device that does it. So they go looking for Auntie to ask her how to open the doors.
I don't think she's going to be much help at this point.
No.
She's a weird cat demon at this point.
When they get to the kitchen, they find a jar containing Mac's severed hand. And they, so frightened, they ask Melody to play piano to cheer them up.
You know, you find a hand, you're a little sad.
Play us some music. They come to an alarming realization as she plays that all of the spooky stuff that Fantasy has been claiming is really happening, but then they hear Gorgeous singing along with the music. Thinking she's back, they go looking for her. So Prof and Kung Fu find her up in Auntie's room, made up and dressed for a wedding. Downstairs, Melody is not responding to Fantasy. She starts playing piano like a crazy person, and then the piano eats her fingers.
And it is a haunting moment to like the way she's playing, the way she's sort of possessed by this piano. But then the piano starts eating her and she's laughing.
Yeah. She's not terribly upset about this. Also, the crazy plastic skeleton seems more alarmed by it.
Well, so this is the part where I was like, I don't understand why they're all still being kind of dopey about it. And then she does, and so it like eats off her fingers, and she's like, ha ha ha, hee. But then it like bites off her arm, and then all of a sudden she gets a different look on her face, like, oh, wait a minute, this isn't good. Like, look, losing your fingers that way ain't good either.
No,
but
took a minute to dawn on her what's happening.
But like once it does, she's like, it kind of washes over her face, and you see it change in a subtle way. And maybe it was just me looking for something that wasn't there, but like there is a sense that like, oh shit, this isn't funny anymore.
Right, because what ends up happening is she is then, like, it bites her whole hand off, and then she starts screaming, and then it drags her into the piano and starts eating her, and we see her, and her face says pain, but the sounds that she's making is laughter.
Mm-hmm. It is, again, a little bit unnerving to watch, like, because everything is...
It's not what you expect.
Yeah, it's kind of like a discordant, everything is discordant in its way.
Yeah. So Gorgeous is about to lead Kung Fu into a closet when Prof suddenly noticed that she has no reflection in the mirror. They also find Auntie's diary on the floor. Now, in the closet, Kung Fu finds the mysterious clock they've been hearing all this time. Trapped inside the clock is Sweet, and then the clock begins to bleed.
Yep, and it is just spewing blood and bile everywhere.
Yep. They run back downstairs, finding Fantasy passed out on the floor with Melody's body parts nearby.
This is where I started to feel like it was sort of reminiscent of like Suspiria or Phenomenon, like those where the music becomes bombastic in a way that overwhelms the visuals. It's just too loud.
Yeah, because her severed fingers are still playing the piano. Mm-hmm. We cut very suddenly to a ramen shop where Togo Sensei eats noodles with Tora-san and a bear for some reason.
Yeah, a bear that is serving him noodles. Yep. That makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean, the bear. Look, the bear that is serving noodles is one of my favorite parts of the movie, so it works.
Yep. So at the house, the girls build a barricade while Prof reads the diary, learning that Auntie has eaten all the local girls over the years and refuses to believe that her fiancé was killed in the war.
Mm-hmm. Also, Auntie is dead.
Yes. Gorgeous's giant head suddenly emerges from the wall, informing the girls that she knows what happened. Her aunt died years ago, but her refusal to accept her fiancé's death in the war kept her body alive, eating all the unmarried girls who come to the house in order to stay alive. Then everything in the house goes apeshit.
And Gorgeous looks cool as hell as a ghost.
In the wedding stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think she looks really great. It's like great costuming.
Very evocative, very cool makeup. Yeah, the whole thing.
But I think this is also this is the part that I thought was really compelling, is the idea that these girls are so dopey and goofy and future oriented and like, well, we're going to Mr. Togo and go have fun and, Kung Fu's so manly. And it's contrasted with this woman whose pain and grief is so profound that it lives on after her death.
Yeah.
And that, like, this is, again, that speaking to both sides, where it's like, this is what the war did to people. This is what the mundane deaths of the war did to people. It destroyed them to the point where all that was left of them was grief and pain.
Yeah. And
it is set against these girls who could not give a fuck about any of that. They just want to be dumb and gorgeous and fantasy. Like, they want to be these sort of shallow stereotypes, because that's what teenagers are. That's who they are. And I think that's it's a very profound thing that I had never really noticed before. And I think it's a thing that gets maybe a little lost in all of these aggressive and abrasive moments.
Yeah, what I find really in a lot of the analysis of this movie that I found, the writer's preoccupation is on the visuals, obviously, because it takes a front seat. Like, the style of this movie is what everybody notices, because like Obayashi makes you notice it. It's unavoidable.
Because I think that's his thing.
So
like,
loud
that
and powerful, but there's a story happening here.
Yes. And that's what I always sort of like, I never gave this movie enough credit for that until I started to really notice like that there are conflicting sort of dual stories happening here. And I think that's a little bit where it falls kind of flat. Is like, he is such an aesthetic person, this visual person, that he's not able to really knock that part out of the park, which is unfortunate, because it is I think a really important part of the story. I don't know that it would have changed the ing much. I think that it's exactly what he wanted to make, and obviously it was very successful. So I think it all worked out. But it's for a country that has struggled, I think, to directly take on any of that. I think it could have been maybe more powerful, but that's a minor thing, because it is still a wonderful movie.
Yeah. So now Kung Fu manages to get outside. She tries to call the police, but finds that the phone is broken. So she kicks it off the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then she has a karate.
My note just says, fuck yeah, Kung Fu.
Yeah. Then she has a karate fight with Auntie's ghost. All of the ghost's strikes leave cat scratches on Kung Fu.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the end of this movie is like straight up nightmare fuel.
Yeah. So meanwhile, Togo Sensei is getting nearer, but he can't find any houses.
Yeah.
So Kung Fu leaps back into this crazy room because what I failed to mention is shit's flying all over the place. The room is like Carol Ann's room in Poltergeist. Mm-hmm. It's visual chaos that's not aided by the fact that like there's wild editing and video effects happening while this is all happening. So yeah, Kung Fu leaps back in. They tell her to kick the picture of the cat, which seems to be controlling everything. She's about to, but the ghost lantern over the room catches her by the head and pulls her up and around the room. Also,
the cat picture keeps changing.
Yeah.
Like at first it's just Blanche the cat, and then all of a sudden it's like it has an angry face.
Yep. So up in the lantern, there's all sorts of weird video effects. Kung Fu sees the floating body parts of her friends. It looks like it's curtains for Kung Fu, but then her legs suddenly emerge from the lantern and fly across the room, kicking the cat picture.
Yeah, one last fucking badass move.
Yep, it breaks all the pictures of the cat in the house and then pulls all of the bridal vestments off of Auntie. She also starts pouring blood from out of nowhere. And then the remaining cat picture begins spewing a torrent of blood, literally filling the room. So Prof and Fantasy are suddenly afloat in the room on a single tatami mat. Now, we again cut away to Togo Sensei. Lost, he drives up to the watermelon guy asking about the house. The crazy watermelon guy tells him that all the girls were eaten by the house and then asks him if he likes watermelon, but Togo does not. He likes bananas.
Oh, shouldn't have said that.
No, because this announcement drives the watermelon guy back, reducing him to a skeleton.
Yep.
Frightened, he gets back into his stupid dune buggy, repeating the word bananas. Yeah. Back at the house, like Velma.
Oh, and then turns into a giant pile of bananas. I like how you were just going to breeze by that.
That
like
that
it
happens
didn't
a little
happen.
bit later. That doesn't show up until Ryoko shows up.
Okay, yeah.
So, like back at the house, like Velma, Prof loses her glasses in the sea of blood and can't see. She's pulled suddenly into the water and dissolves in a really neat video effect that apparently was done by pouring blue paint on her. Yeah. So Fantasy, the only girl left, floats to the stairs where Gorgeous waits for her. And then she turns into Auntie and then back. And then Gorgeous comforts her as she goes to sleep. And then her eyes flash green and the clock strikes 1.
Yeah, she's dead.
Yep. Now, cut to Dad's alarmingly effervescent girlfriend. Gauzy wardrobe billowing in the breeze.
She is hopping in that car and she is just cruising on down the highway.
Pulls up to the watermelon stand, finding Togo now nothing but a pile of bananas wearing his stupid hat and sunglasses.
Why not?
I guess.
I feel like you get to the end, they were like, say, how are you going to end this movie? And he was like, shit.
PAs, go get me some bananas. Yep. She effortlessly drifts up to the house, finding that it's all renewed and cleaned up. Gorgeous is there, and she opens up the house, inviting her in, and then she ominously tells her that her friends will be up soon and they'll be hungry. Then they shake hands, and the girlfriend Ryoko bursts into flames suddenly. And then Blanche, the cat, is all that remains when she burns out. Making me wonder, is Ryoko the cat?
I get the feeling the cat is not good.
No, the cat's bad. It's a Bakeneko.
Maybe, because I feel like the way that Ryoko is presented initially is that wicked stepmother.
Yeah.
And then they sort of like, they switch it and she's this gauzy, beautiful woman the whole time. And I was like, okay, maybe not, but I don't know, maybe.
So yeah, there's a
who's to
cryptic
say
monologue
really
now about holding the love you have for your loved ones in your heart forever, and then we fade to credits.
Yeah, I don't see this is a tough movie because I don't know what to make of it ever narratively, but it's so visually compelling. And it has so much rewatchability. Like, I love this movie more every single time I see it. Yeah. There's just more to love because it is so weird. And in its way, it is fun and wacky. And it is horror. It's just horror of a very different kind.
Yeah, it's like I said, it is recognizably a horror movie, but Obayashi resists the urge to make it like a repellent kind of horror. He juxtaposes it with all of this like silly stuff. So you get these like goofy characters You get the even the villain is kind of silly and funny
and playful in a weird way.
Yeah, and playful, even though she's like murdering these girls
Killing them,
and eating
She's
them.
killed everybody. The reason she wants them is because she's already killed all the girls in the village.
Yeah.
So that's why she seems so lonely and so old and decrepit at first, is because she hasn't had people to eat in a long time. I mean, it's not even her. It's a ghost.
It's the
like
house
what's left.
really is what it is.
I think it's really interesting to take that kind of Western haunted house trope, but make it very Japanese. And I think, again, my only criticism really is that he's kind of undermining his own narrative in a way. He is telling a very important story about these two cultures, and he's trying to bridge them and talk about how they're clashing. And I think because his style is so visual, a lot of it gets buried underneath that. And that's unfortunate, because I think it is a really good story. I think it's a very interesting story. It's an important story that just doesn't really come through unless you spend a lot of time speculating,
It's
which I've done.
deceptively simple. And it's like I said earlier, it's very easy to get carried away with the movie's sort of visual aspect because it's so powerful and it is so central to the movie's entire appeal that it's very easy to forget that it's telling a story that's very worthwhile. And it's worth thinking about, because there is also the fact that it is distinctly Japanese. It is very culturally rooted in Japan, which is why I think it took this movie so long to reach the West.
And even by Japanese standards, it is out there.
Oh yeah, but also, there are very recognizable Western fairy tale tropes. There's a lot of grim fairy tale qualities to it. So
I would say that grim fairy tale, that's what I was trying to think of earlier. I would say if people are into, what is that guy's name? He's a writer, very popular Japanese writer.
Stephen King.
Yes, popular Japanese writer Stephen King.
Haruki Murakami.
If you like Murakami, this is the fucking movie for you.
Oh my God,
because
yes.
Murakami is he's heavily influenced by American culture and sort of Western culture more broadly, and this is that.
Got some stories about cats as well.
Yeah, oh yeah, he loves cat stories. Dude loves Italian food.
And
loves
jazz music.
He's very sad. He does not think much of women. Great writer.
Detailed descriptions of the texture of women's pubic hair. You find that quite often in his books.
Do you mean like Aomami's silky pubic hair? Is that what you're referring to? Hey, everybody, read 1Q84. It's extremely long and very good, but man, is it weird.
Yeah. Jesus Christ.
It's a hell of a movie. It's one that you really have to watch to
really,
fully
yeah.
appreciate.
It struck me. It occurred to me upon watching it that us talking about this movie as we do, we were going to leave a lot out. We're going to have to leave a lot out because the visuals are not easily described, but they're a very, very important part of the movie as you're watching it, because that's what Obayashi's style at the time was. And this was him really kind of leaving it all on the dance floor, because you can go out and you can find some of his short films on YouTube, and they have a lot of this, but this was him suddenly with all of these weird editing tricks and video effects and stuff that he was experimenting with, but with a Toho budget. So he was able to do fucking everything that he wanted to do in spades. And so
it has that feeling of a guy who's like, I may never get another chance.
Yeah. So on top of us talking about the story, you have to see it, and it's definitely worthwhile. I don't know if we've made that clear. This movie's very good, and I think everybody should see it. And there's a really fucking great version out by Criterion that you
it is currently, you can get the Criterion disc. It's got a bunch of other shit on it. It's really cool. It's also on Criterion, the channel, right now, and there's a bunch of other movies, his later stuff, which I have not watched any of them because I've been in a different mood lately. But I would like to watch them because I'm very curious to see what he did after this.
There's one about a couple of people get hit on the head and they switch bodies, but they also switch gender. And so it's kind of like a reflection on that, as like they kind of come to learn about each other through the switch of gender.
Oh, that feels precarious.
Oh yeah, it seems a little dangerous, but also The Girl Who Leapt Through Time is also really good. That's from 1983, I think. But yeah,
Yeah, he seems like he went a long while without making another movie.
yeah, because I
but
believe
yeah,
it's not until about 1981 or 82 that he actually makes another feature. Like after this, he goes back to making advertisements.
Because everyone was like, I don't know, man. I don't know if we have it in us to do another one.
Yeah, yeah. There was apparently a period where Toho was like, "Hey, sequel," and he was like, "I think I'm good."
I wish he had. It's not too late. Well, it is, but
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah. Oh, anyway, yeah. House, see it. It's fantastic.
Yep.
What's next? What are we doing next?
Well, as you said up top, we got Bring Me the Axe coming back next week with Michel Soavi, crown jewel of his filmography, Cemetery Man.
Mm-hmm.
It is hilarious. It is sexy. It is gory as fuck. It's super fun. And in 2 weeks, it will be October. And we are dedicating the entire month to Bring Me to the Axe. We are doing 4 heavy hitters, starting with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, I can't wait.
And that is a movie that I like a lot.
Man, I got thoughts, and I cannot wait to talk about them, about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So, be back here in a week as we give you a little Italian with Cemetery Man. Be back.
Della Morte, Della More.
Yes, and then be back in 2 as we kick off our spooky season proper with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Ew.